Hey everyone, welcome to the CZ Armor channel. What I have here today is the Tactical Sports 2, already with some modifications that I did to shoot in the limited optics. I'm doing a video talking about this gun specifically, in specific, but about kind of the Tactical Sports series for the CZ. So we talk a little bit about the Checkmate and the TS2 as well. This video here though is just to document this gun going from this to this. The whole process consists on deep cleaning it, take everything apart, degrease everything, sandblast, frame and slide, take all this original coat off of it. Then it goes to the oven to a burnout, comes out and it's ready. When it's ready to coat, we're gonna do a first coat, partial curing, some stencil work, another coat, either partial cure if I'm going to do another stencil on top of it, and a third coat, or just do a full cure in it and then build everything up again, assemble everything up again. So I'm going to try to document every step of the way and kind of show you how this is coming up, so you see how this went from this to what you saw before. Alright, so here she is in the stock form except for the SRO and the delete in the front sight. Everything else, oh, and the trigger shoe as well, everything else is stock in this gun. So we're going to start disassembling, taking everything apart. First step is going to be take this mag well off and the clips off. Next, it's going to be the mainspring cup. So I have to remove the spin first. Sorry, the mag brake needs to come out first. So push the pin here. Now, it's not going. Now, take the slide off the frame. Slide lock out. Slide separate from the frame. And this is pretty much the same process you would find on the Shadow 2. Basically, almost all the CZ steel guns are kind of the same to disassemble. Some of them have a firepin block or a decocker, and for the double action ones are not competition oriented and you have a little bit more work here. But in general, you're going to follow about the same steps. I'm going to lift the sear spring leg here, lift it up to take that out of the way and push the safety from the right to the left. Pull this out. Now I'm going to use a plastic punch just to push the safety off. There we go. Safety comes out, and then my ejector or my sear key is going to come out as well. I need to be careful on this one because that's one of the differences between the Tactical Sports series and the, let's say, Shadow 2, SPO1, etc. The small frame CZs. These ones have this couple very tiny springs that you can see here in the back of the ejector, the back of the sear cage. So be careful not to lose these springs because they fall really easy and they're very small. Then next, what I'm gonna do here is this apart, get a tweezer and take the detents out. Safety detent on the left side, the one with the spring comes off. Then on the right side, this one is just the detent itself, no spring on it. Then the safety comes off on the right side as well. Now we can remove the counter pin off the hammer pin. So this is use a little flat screwdriver to push it up here with this flat screwdriver, and use a pick to push it out. Okay, so a little tiny counter pin. Then your hammer has one more pin to push from the right to the left. Hammer pin comes out. Hammer straight comes out. Then the last two things we're going to remove here is a trigger bar, a complete trigger bar assembly with the trigger shoe and everything, and then we're going to do the mag release spring. So I haven't replaced this with a floating pin, so I have one side is still wider than the other, and it's okay because at the end this is gonna have one of those nitro fins that cover the trigger pin, so it won't let the trigger walk to the left. So as long as I keep the right side of it wide, it won't walk to the the opposite, right? So as long as I keep the left side wide, it won't walk to the right, and the nitro fin is not gonna let it walk to the left. So I just need to find out what was this. Yeah. Need this turtle punch. Oh yeah, this is the side that I already did. Okay, perfect. This comes out. That's the trigger pin. There's no need to. The trigger turn spring on the single action guns is not going to really fly away. It's different than the double action ones. So trigger turn spring here is actually attached to the trigger shoe and the trigger bar, so it's not gonna go anywhere. And then we're gonna take out the, where's my stand? We're gonna remove the mag release spring. First thing we need to do is remove this flat screwdriver here. Flat screw here. This has to be removed, and then we take the spring off, and then release the mag release button. This comes off. Now we pull choose this tweezer. This comes your mag release spring. Get that out. Your mag release button comes out. And there's one more thing here in the frame that we need to remove to consider is a complete disassembly, which is this little pin here on the side that keeps the slide release spring in place. So we remove that pin and then remove this the little pin and the slide release spring. That's just a little. There we go. That's the pin. Those are very small parts, so you gotta be careful with that. And then the spring comes out. That's the little spring, because you haven't seen it. And this is done. There's nothing else to remove on the frame. We're gonna go to the slide now. All right, the slide is, we take the guiding rod and spring out. This one, different than the Shadow 2 and other not double action guns, you have a plug here. So that's kind of a unique. The TS2 doesn't have this plug anymore, but I believe the Tactical Sports, the original one, had kind of a polymer plug here too that you need to remove in order to open the clearance to have the barrel out. And the last things I'm going to remove here is the dot, the SRO optic, and the bushing and extractor. So the right box here. SRO comes out. See, that's one of the main reasons I need to coat this gun is not just that I want it to look different, but also this was just cut, not coated. So I need to cut. This is prone to rust. It's just exposed steel. It's not stainless steel. There's no any kind of rust protection here, so I need to coat it. So that might be what you call the real reason why I want to do this. But you know, since I'm doing it, I'm gonna do something cool with this gun. All right, we got the extractor now off. Is it the right punch? No, that's not the right one. This is the right one. Extractor pin out. Put the punch out of the way. extractor comes out. And then the extractor spring as well. And we have one more thing. Oops. There we go. And then we have one more thing to remove, which is the bushing. The bushing, I'm gonna need to put this in a vise, and I'm gonna need to turn the camera to the other side. So while I'm here, one thing I forgot to do actually, is to remove the firing pin. So we're gonna go push the firing pin block. Push the firing pin in, depress it so it releases the pressure on the firing pin plate. Turn around, firing pin comes out. The spring, sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't. Let's see, just a little. Nope. There we go. Spring comes off. Firing pin springing this out. And then now, yes, now it's just the bushing. So the way I work on this is I normally put a little bit of WD-40 on this end. Grab a, just to make it easier. So we got a little bit of WD-40 here on the inside where the bushing goes there, and just soaking it. Just a little bit. While it soaks in it, I'm gonna put this here. Remove the front side pin. So you would have, oops, you would have a front side here. I already removed it because this is gonna be a limited optic gun, so it's gonna be just optics. I don't use the front side in it. So we got a 1/16. Yeah, 1/16 punch. Here. Front side pin out. So I was being careful, I didn't want this to fly away. It's really small and easy to lose. So that's my front side pin. And then I drag my front side delete out. It's going to be interesting to push out. Didn't think about that when I just filed an old front side that I had. Make a delete. There we go. It's coming out relatively easy. Alright, that's out. So that's my front side delete. It's just a flat, like a flat front side. Now we're gonna push the bushing now. You got a 10mm socket and a T-handle, and that goes there, and that's when that WD-40 is gonna help. And just drive it. Alright, so this was just a lot harder than we normally have, but it's coming out. See here, it starts driving out the bushing. It was just a lot harder, so that WD-40 helped, but not really as much as I'm used to. This one was really stuck, so we're gonna finish removing it now. Here. Got the bushing out, and now it's a complete disassembled slide. We got a slide, we got a frame. They're both totally disassembled. They're ready to do a deep clean on it, and the next step is going to be sandblast in preparation for Cerakote. Okay, so after deep cleaning, degreasing everything, I sandblasted, and this is what it looks like without any coating on top of it. So both slide and frame are all blasted. So this creates a kind of an etched surface on top of it for the Cerakote to adhere to it. I did the same for the magwell, so that's the original. It's like brass. It was a red Cerakote in black, but I want to put a different tone of black, different sheen. And this is the firing pin plate that I want to be in the same color. Those are the grips. The grips will be black. This will be black. This is going to be, I think I mentioned that, but this is what I'm gonna try to do in it. This kind of a mosaic or Damascus pattern on the gun. So now it's to the Cerakote booth. And this is the final product after Cerakoting. So I kind of like it, this Damascus or topography camo, or whatever you want to call it. Here's a slide, what it looks like. The only thing I had to do so far is that I had to refit this slide to frame, because even though I was careful enough to cover the rails when I applied the first coat of Cerakote, and only removed for the second one, so we only got one coat of paint, but even that way was enough to make it too tight here. Now it's pretty good, sliding pretty well. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is to reassemble the gun. Okay, so to reassemble, I'm going to do a reverse order process. So I'm going to put the firing pin and firing pin spring back in place. The firing pin plate that was also coated goes socket. I was looking for this tool. There we go, got the firing pin there. Now I'm gonna go with the bushing. So I need it. Alright, so let's get the bushing back on. Back in the slide. Fix the sliding device. So remember, this bushing was really hard to come out, so it looks like it's pretty tight. So I'm gonna do a little bit of lithium grease here, just a little bit, really just a thin coat of grease, just to make sure I increase my chances of having this sliding in easier than it was for coming out. Now the important thing here, and the only thing that can go wrong actually, well, you can also kind of pushing it bent, but if you're pushing it straight, you need to make sure you align this notch that you see here. Let me see if I can get this on focus here. There you go. This notch that you have here in the top of your bushing, this is where the front side pin is gonna go through and fix the both the front side, and not in my case here just the front side delete, but that front side delete plate and the bushing will all be fixed by the pin. But it's critical that this notch aligns with the hole at this slide that the pin's gonna go through. So if you get this slide, and get the slide off just to show you what I'm talking about, is that notch needs to align with this here. This is where you have the hole in your slide for the pin to go through and lock your front sight and bush in place. So as long as you have that aligned, and you make sure you go slowly and patiently pushing this through. I don't have a perfect tool to actually push it in. I believe this would be the ideal tool for this type of work. I'm just gonna hammer, just gonna strike it, slowly and steady until it goes in. So make sure it's aligned. Looks like I have a good alignment here, and I'll push a little bit with my hand. And then I'm simply gonna get, like, you can use a little bit piece of wood to kind of make it flat and start hammering. It's going in. You know so it looks like it's all the way in, but you can confirm if it is or not if you get a punch, and it has to go through without much resistance here. So it looks like it is going maybe a little bit more. Punch, the punch goes through. There you go. It's going through now. So you can can see here that the punch is going all the way through, and that's what you need. Now you know your pin is going to work too, and it's going to lock everything in place as it's supposed to. Okay, so next we're going to put the front side. In this case, just a delete, just a little plate, and then lock everything in place with the front side pin. Okay, my plastic punch here. There we go. Okay, we're going to drive the front side pin in, and this should get everything locked in. All right. That's what it looks like with the front side pin in place. Okay, cool. All right, back here with the sliding frame in the same table, I'm going to do the three last things in the slide. Is going to be the extractor and spring, the barrel and guiding rod, and then the optics. I'm gonna mount the optics to the very last thing after the gun is all ready. So let's put the extractor now. I'm gonna need a 1/16 punch. I'm sorry, I forgot to show you the spring. That's the extractor spring here, and then extractor right next to it. So put this back. Spring goes first on the notch that is reserved for it, and then it goes the extractor. I'm gonna push it back in place, push it in with my right thumb push the extractor back, my left thumb push the against the spring, and then I go with the 1/16 punch and push the punch in. Sometimes it slips through. There you go. And that's the extractor is in place, held by the punch. Now I'm gonna go put this back at my, so pull it, pull the pin, pull the punch into its flush, and you can see the hole where the extractor pin is gonna go in. Then I like to have, that's why I have this block with a hole in it, because then I can put the punch through it, and then it goes like this and go at the edge of the table. And if it kind of helps a lot to do that. I have a punch, one of those hollow punch that use the guide pins, and a little bit of lubrication here, make sure it helps me a little bit. It goes where the extractor pin is, and then just hammer it. I hold it with my left hand, I hold underneath it the punch as well, so the punch doesn't move with vibration. And I start hammering it. It will push the punch out and replace it, holding the extractor in place. So a little bit more. This should be it. Got the punch out, and I'll just finish driving the extractor pin with just a flat 3/32 punch. I'm gonna check, make sure this is operating normally, because with all the Cerakote and stuff, sometimes the tolerances change. I'm gonna make sure the extractor is not grabbing anywhere. It's moving pretty freely, that's good. So now barrel. And I'll do the lubrication at the end. Oh, of course, there's a plug here for this one that I forgot to put. So get the plug in. And then lastly, the guiding rod and spring. And that slide's ready to go. Just missing the optics. I'm gonna put the optics at the end. We go to the frame now. Okay, I'm gonna start the frame here by one of the most annoying parts to put together in my opinion. This is the mag release button, and mag release button not so much. It's easier to go, it goes in and out really easy, but it's what keep it in place, which is this spring that sometimes is a little bit of a nightmare to put it in. So the way it works is the magazine release button has these two notches here. The spring needs to go in. The two legs, as you can see, they're wider, so you need to compress them and put each leg in each notch here, and that will keep the magazine release from moving, you know, from going out of the frame from either side, and also keeps the tension. So when you press the magazine release to release, you know, a magazine release button to release magazine, it will, this spring will go back in place. There's this loop on the top that needs to go. See if I can explain you in the frame here real quick. So the two legs of that spring goes both either in each of these walls here, and then the loop goes on top here, and that's the flat screw that goes on top after it to lock it in place. Your magazine release button goes perpendicular like here, and then that's where the spring meets the magazine release button. The challenge here sometimes is there's nothing preventing the spring, which is under tension, so the legs fit between these two walls, to just slip forward. So this is what is kind of a challenging sometimes. So sometimes I got lucky and I do it really quick, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Let's see what happens this time. I'm gonna get the magazine release button in first, make sure it is moving freely. It is good. And then the look that I have with this is basically get a small plier like this and just squeeze it, right? Actually, let me get the magazine release button out. I'll put it after it. Squeeze the spring, squeeze the legs of the spring so they fit within those walls and go in there in the frame. And from the top, you make sure the legs are between the wall, and at the bottom you use your thumb holding through the frame to the grip panel space here to make sure it stays in place, and then you push it in like so. So I got lucky, and this time it went no problem. So there we go. So here's my peak. Spring is there, the loop is on top, the bolt's gonna go in, and the magazine release button is there. All right, now we're gonna put that bolt in place. It's pretty straightforward. Here's the bolt. This is a very thin thread, so you might use a little bit of blue Loctite there. Just make sure you don't put too much, because it's really easy to seize this bolt there, this little screw there, and you might not really need much because it's a really thin thread. But if you want to be super safe, in the single action guns, this kind of, there's not much of a consequence of this bolt, of this screw getting loose. Unless it comes completely out, you probably won't see much of a difference on the operation of the gun. On the double action guns, yes, because this also, the double action guns, this also holds the CZ guns. This also holds the trigger bar spring. So if this starts walking out, then the trigger bar spring loses tension, gets weaker, and that prevents your trigger to reset in double action. So I'm gonna drive this all the way to the bottom, and we're gonna move to the next part. So I did one of the most annoying things first. Now I'm gonna go for one of the easiest ones next, which is the slide stop spring. So this little tiny spring here that gets locked in place by this little pin. So the way it goes is this little up curve here that you have in the spring goes into this tiny little hole you have in it. Might not be able to show you. There's a tiny little hole here in the frame that goes in and turns forward like so, and the spring gets positioned in that little notch it has for it. Right here's the spring laying down. So what you're gonna do now is you got a small flat screw would work, and just push the spring down while you put the pin inside here in the hole, and just push it. That's it. Little tap, and the pin is there in the hole holding this spring in place under tension. Perfect. Done. Next is going to be the trigger bar. So single action guns, here's a comparison of double action CZ double action guns and CZ single actions. This is a double action trigger bar with the trigger show. So that's your SPO1, Shadow 2, CC75 in general, double action. So C is a complete bowl with both sides, has this all this kind of a different patterns here in the back to deal with the disconnector and the sear. Right, so pretty complex design because of the double action. Your trigger geometry here is completely different than a single action as well. And compared to a single action, which is a single bar, one side has only this area that interacts with the sear. This bump is to make sure you get the trigger reset, and in the gun, basically this slide will push it down and get this out of battery, prevent you to pull the trigger when the gun's out of battery. And then the trigger return spring goes here. So very different design. We're gonna do it, put it back in place now. It goes in. Now we need to find alignment for the hole, and I'm gonna put a pin, a punch to be kind of my slave pin there. Technically, it's much easier to put this in place than the double action ones because you don't have to deal with the trigger return spring. The trigger return spring is already fixed in place and it won't move. Alright, so this is there. Got the block. That same hole that I showed you guys I used for replace the extractor. I'm gonna use now to replace the trigger bar as well. So push it down, get my trigger pin. So I'm not replacing this one with a trigger float with the floating pin yet. So here's one thing about this too, like the floating pin that you're gonna find there, Cajun Gun sells it, for instance, that you replace this pin because this is our staked roll pin. So if we don't have a way to stake it when we remove it, it becomes kind of a it can walk out of the gun, right? So use a floating pin that it's a very smart design that will be held in place by the trigger return spring. However, remember, the trigger return spring design in the single action guns and the double action guns is completely different. And in the double action guns, actually, the floating pin, it's not going to be locked in place, like safely locked there by the trigger return spring, because the trigger return spring is just not interacting with it almost at all. So there's no way to make sure that that trigger is not going to walk out unless you use some red Loctite or something. And I think that's what Cajun Gun recommends as well. So what I'm going to do is not replace that pin because, you know, it's the same situation. There's a risk of walking out, so I can use some red Loctite on this too. But what I did here to prevent it to walk out, and I think I mentioned this before, is this pin, when I removed it through one side, I believe from the left to the right side of the gun. And what that does is the left side of the pin is then is shrunk, right? It's not staked anymore. But the other side, the right side, it's still staked. So if I keep the other side on the on the left side of the gun, this slide stop, which is a nitro fin, actually covers the pin. So the pin is not going to come out to that side. And if that is the larger side of the pin still staked, it won't come out to the other side either. So it's going to be safe. So I'm going to measure this, find out which one of these two is the one that shrunk. So that measures 2.3 millimeter, give or take, and that measures 2.4 millimeter. So that's the side that's still staked, it's still larger. So my pin is going to go this way in the gun. So I'm going to go back here. Put this where I want. course, I lost the reference here which side we're talking about. Alright, so I'm gonna mark with a Sharpie here on the side that is the side that is still, or rather the one that's gonna go in. So this is the one that's gonna go in the gun. So I'm gonna put a little bit of lubrication here. Pull this punch a little bit. And get this right. 2.2 here, 2.3 on this side, 2.42 on this one, yes. So that's definitely the side. Hold this in place and let it dry. Done. Trigger is in place. Kind of organize this mass a little bit here. Oh, okay, so this wasn't feeling good. It's because the trigger bar wasn't really accommodated up this way, where it needs to be here. So trigger bar goes, and there is a kind of a profile in the frame that the trigger bar kind of latches in, and this is where you have right now, so it's all working fine. So good. Let's go to the next step. So next, I'm going to put the hammer back. So hammer thread goes back there. Get the hammer pin. My hammer pin goes always from the left side to the right. Push it in. Now I want to make sure, since I coat this gun, that there's no friction here. Because like I said, Cerakote sometimes will change the tolerances here. Okay, this feels pretty loose, pretty good. Now next is the counter pin that fixes the hammer pin in place. Find that little tiny pin that goes on top here, kind of a perpendicular to the hammer pin. This might give me some trouble too. Nope, it went straight in, perfect. Same thing, right? Tolerances, that hole, you know, get too much paint on it, too much coat on it, I'll need to do something about it, but it went just fine. So I got my hammer in, perfect. Next is the safety detent. So I'm gonna get the detent on the left side, the one that has a spring, right? That goes this side. Here I like to put this way and put it in. Use a flat screwdriver to keep it in place and just push it in with the tweezer, and it's there. Quite simple, quite easy. Next is the other safety on the right side and the detent. So safety and a little detent from the right side. Safety is also moving free, which is good. I'm gonna use the tweezer to put that detent in place. The detent, same thing, right? If the tolerances there now are too tight because of the coat, the detent's not gonna go in. Now I need to feed it. Let's see, this one, yeah, it's a little tighter. It's a lot tighter than I would like, but as long as it goes in. Alright, I'm gonna need to fit this and be back. Okay, I did a little bit of work on the detent. It looks like it might go better now. Might go in a better way now. Let's get the safety back in. Get the detent. Alright, much better. Okay, now we got the ejector or the sear cage, however you want to call it. Go in, safety goes across. We raise the sear spring leg here. That's going to then, after the safety goes through, rest on the safety notch and prevent the safety to move. This is good. Push the detent back, safety goes in. So everything seems to be tighter now. Yeah, safety is working fine. Good to go. Okay, now one of the last things, not quite the last yet, is our mainspring plug. So this is a modified mainspring. This is a 23-pound mainspring, so pretty heavy. I wanted it to be heavy for a few reasons. One of the main reasons is kind of slow down this slide going back as I removed this. I think I explained that too, but it comes with a plastic buffer that I removed. So it has the guiding rod comes with the plastic buffer right here. It's kind of the goal of this is kind of provide some cushion when the slide hits the frame. Since I removed this, I kind of put a very heavy mainspring to slow down the slide a bit and don't produce less wear in the gun overall. It also slows down the slide, so there is also a function on kind of a recoil spring and mainspring work kind of together on creating the best balance for the load that you're using. So get the straight up, spring in, cup in. Now I need to compress this. And it's quite a heavy spring, so what I'm going to do here is I have here we go. This is kind of my platform that I normally work on. And it has a little pin here, I don't know if you see it, that I can use to push the spring cup like this. Holding the spring cup matches kind of this pin a little bit, and then it helps me push the pin, the spring plug beyond what I can do with my hands, and it's easier to then go with the, there we go, with the cup, with the pin. So that's in. See if this is working well. Now the last thing that goes in the frame is the mag brake. So mag brake goes into this notch here. Well, this is the mag brake, by the way. That blade that goes here protects the spring from the magazine is what we call mag brake. This is normally like just a slide in pin. You don't need to tap it or anything. Hammer, driving with a hammer. Just because everything is so tight now after the coating, I need to get a little bit of a breaking that coat off to make sure it goes in easier. There you go. It's all good. Frame is complete. Reassemble. Well, not really. Let's get the grips. Yeah. Magwell went in without any problem. I really like the way this gun is looking. I don't know what you think, but let me know what you think in the comments, but I really like the way this looks. I gotta dry out my hand a little bit. Now the last thing is get the slide in. Put the slide stop, the optics. The gun will be ready. Slide stop goes in. Something to break in here real quick. I need to check on that, but it does look really good. I'm gonna get the optics now in, and you'll be ready to go. We'll call it a day. Done. Let me know what you think in the comments. I really like the way it looks like. It's kind of a Damascus or topography camo tactical sports too. Thank you for watching. See you next video.